Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, alongside Professor Pixel. Xtreme TV is our show tonight, Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 16. We've been covering every Twin Peaks episode, that wonderful ABC TV show from the late 80s, early 90s that I have to say, Pixel, we really loved the first season, liked the second one, and then there's been some sinkhole situations here in the second season as they're finishing up here these last few episodes. We have a very wild, weird, kooky episode to discuss here because there's a lot of things you can either like or hate about this episode, but the one thing that we can definitely say is this episode swings for the fences, and some might think it's adorable. I really don't know what to say, and man, I'll just start off by and say you start off with this because of where we left off and what you think of how this opens up.
Well, I mean, from what I remember of last week's, or not last week's, the last review we did. I know you weren't happy with the episode. I was far more satisfied with it than you.
Satisfied you were, sir.
Yes, and in this episode, it starts out, I wouldn't say similarly to where we left off. We are in the sheriff's station, and it goes through, it shows an owl statuette in like this glass casing. And it goes across as we're hearing the tape of Wyndham Earl that he left for Dale last time, saying that, oh, it's your move. You got to be very careful. I know how you think. And it pans to the mask until we finally see Harry and Dale. And they're the ones listening to the tape. And Harry afterwards says that he doesn't want Dale alone. If Wyndham Earl's crazy enough to go after him, it could be it could be fatal. But Dale's like, no, if he wanted to kill me, he already would have. I'm okay. You just need to get Pete here because we need to make our next move. And here's a fact that I didn't realize about the mask before. I think it's supposed to be the face of the woman that both Dale and Wyndham Earl loved, Wyndham Earl's wife, Caroline, I believe.
And what made you think that? Did you catch that from dialogue or?
Well, it's mixed that because the scene it pretty much ends after Dale staring at this mask, and Harry says, "She was beautiful, wasn't she?" And Dale's like, "Yes, she was." And I didn't notice the features of the mask before, but they are pretty feminine. So I think it might be like a face mold that Wyndham Earl would make, and knowing what we know of Wyndham Earl, that is something that he would do.
You know, and that would have been completely 100% total badassery if that was alluded to early on and then we see it or something, or they were shocked and they said, well, what's this mask? That's her face or something. That would have been so cool because Wyndham Earl, zero level of excitement. I get more excitement watching Lucy sharpen pencils, honestly. Wyndham Earl's just not doing it for me. It's very disappointing. It's not evil or whatever. And it's a shame because we've said before that Cooper and Truman have a great chemistry even when Hawk comes involved or even Albert. And that's when it feels like it's doing the most detective kind of stuff. And it's a nice bit of chemistry, and there's some scenes like it. Although to me, when they open up here, it's just a continuation, like you said, of the last episode. I don't hate this scene here. It's weird though in the next scene when you see Pete, and he's making breakfast and he's kind of yucking up there, and he's doing that with Andrew Packard, and it's like, just when we thought Catherine, who appeared from possibly being dead, and Josie being Catherine's slave, for lack of a better term, their arrangement that they've gone to. Nobody cares about the mill. Nobody cares about the Ghostwood development. Nothing. I'm at this point where I'm like, I like you, Pete, but I'm seeing you not as this quiet, introspective type of person that we've come to know as being a genius chess level player. You're palling around with Andrew Packard, and so Catherine's going to go back to plotting and scheming. And I'll bite my tongue because this angle ends absolutely phenomenally at the end of the episode, but not much going on in these first two little scenes here too, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Pete and the whole chess thing.
Yeah, no, I am too, because this episode, I hesitate to say that it actually makes me care about this situation, But just seeing Pete and Andrew being the pals we never saw them be, it was actually nice.
Yeah, we care about Pete, so we want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. And from there, we're, I believe, back at the sheriff's station. We're with Harry as he stares at Jonathan, Mr. Lee's, I don't remember his real name, picture. And that's when Hawk enters, pushing Hank on in. And Harry's doing his best to throw the book at him, saying that I'm arresting you for the attempted murder of Leo Johnson. And you've broken your parole. But that's when Hank says that he has an offer. He wants to give the information of Andrew Packard's killer, which we've had an idea of who that could be, but he flat out says that pretty much Josie is the one who did it, the one who's sleeping with the sheriff. And that's when Hawk gets a good moment because he knocks down Hank's crutch, and he runs into the desk. Hawk is just a solid guy. And that's when Harry says to get him out of here. This is the first time he screams in this episode.
Or ever. His blood pressure actually raises and his heart rate approaches 50. I mean, because he's so cool and collect, which I like. It's out of character for him. It's a neat scene all the way around, but for totally wrong reasons, because you're absolutely right. It's a neat little thing when Hawk kicks out Hank's one of his crutches or whatever, and he stumbles and helps him back up or whatever. It's like, yeah, F you, Hank. But that's also, it seems like it's out of Hawk's character. I don't know why, because he's doing it just to kind of like, don't be a jerk to my boss, rather than, the Indian spirit animal nature philosophical type dude we've come to know. So I was a little surprised by that. And then I was surprised the end going, the most sane one in this entire situation of all three of these guys is Hank with the deal. Because he goes, wait a minute, you mean to tell me you'd rather put me on with an attempted murder charge versus something that's a lot bigger? He's got a point, doesn't he?
He does have a point there. But as we know, Harry's not looking at the situation with the clearest eyes. And Hawk, like he is a more peaceful spirit. But at the same time, that's his boss and his friend right there that Hank is trying to harm his girl, you could say. So whenever he knocks it down, it felt like a natural response to me. But
you're a sheriff in this town. You could pull anything. Come on. She can't be that good.
She can't be that good. Well, I don't know. Somehow she has him wrapped around her little.
As long as she even brought him food, for God's sakes, at least if she cooked, that'd be another plus. Well, it's because you said he yells, and he does, and I went, whoa, wait a minute, Sheriff Truman, that's not like you. Plus, it sounded weird. It didn't sound like it worked for him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And later in the episode, we're going to talk about his screaming a little more. But from there, we're still in the sheriff's station. Dale has been covering this Josie information with Albert on his own. And Albert has some shocking information. It turns out that the bullet that was in Mr. Lee came from the same gun as the one who shot Dale. So it's saying that Josie shot Dale right here. And Albert literally says, I'm going to throw the book at her. And Dale wants to talk to her first, give her a chance to explain. And it quickly moves on from there.
Yeah, so one thing I'll say about this entire episode is it doesn't necessarily have the video transitions that we like, whether it's nature or this, that, whatnot. But it's actually the episode is scored start to finish. There's hardly ever a break in any sort of sounds, and it's basically Laura's theme, the jazz theme, and the other one that's 2 or 3 chords and real ominous or whatever that we've commented on. Similar themes that we've heard since episode 1, season 1, and so it does add a lot of punch to the entire episode. But for me, it helps it out, but it can't carry it. And so I still feel like this is a better episode than the last couple of them too. But as bizarre it gets even more bizarre because we get the next scene we get, and it just shows how far we've come really, and all of it too. You get to where Audrey, I guess, is trying to learn how the Great Northern works. So she's like going to different areas. So she's going to this one or whatever, and this guy's giving her some crap because he doesn't want her taking her job, and how prescient that will be later on in life. But this rather roguish, dashing, handsome young man comes in, and
Billy Zane.
And it's Billy Zane. Holy crap, we got Billy Zane. I forgot he was in this too. My goodness. Billy Zane's looking good here, you know, and as a straight dude with his old lady, I can sit there and say, I liked it, but I like his look in here. He's got the old, what kind of jacket would this be here? It's not quite a pea coat, but he's got the collar up on it, and it just looks right. He just looks so young and youthful, and not anything like we would come to know him once he hit critical mass several years later. Although by this time he had started in Dead Calm with, I think, Sam Neill in it, and I think it's the first movie of Nicole Kidman, one of the first, before she met Tom Cruise, and that's a good movie where he plays a disturbed individual. But here, we don't know who he is, but it's an introduction of a character, and it's like, damn, this guy's devilish eyes, just kind of charming, laid back, but you can tell Audrey's actually kind of like, you know, Bobby's hot, and I control everybody sexually around here, but she can't control herself. It's pretty impressive. She watches him as he walks off, and a really, really old couple just checked in and dropped something, and he picks up for the old lady. It's like, gosh darn it, he's a swell guy. And then from there, we go straight to the other relationship thing. Instead of positive, it's the negative one. It's Nadine and Ed, where Nadine comes in and, you know, she's like, we need to talk. You know, I'm in love with Mike, the teenage boy, of course. And this is the one ludicrous element I was going to allow myself to not get upset over or think about too much. Although I had mentioned before, with some of the lazy writing, there's ways I thought we could have went down unexplored avenues that would have made it very engaging, such as Mike going, okay, and then they actually start a relationship because he's off screen. We don't see him and all that too. But basically, she wants a divorce, and you know, Ed doesn't jump for joy, but he seems shocked, like, I can't believe this is happening, even though it's kind of what he wants.
She doesn't ask for a divorce.
Kind of this whole element's just like a level C type thing, because it could have had more wheels to it. What were you going to say?
She doesn't ask for a divorce. She asks to break up because, in her mind, she's still in high school.
You're right. Technically, that is true.
When she came home early, I thought maybe she woke up. I thought maybe she was snapped back to reality, even though she was loosely hanging on to reality before her accident.
Yeah.
There's one piece of information that we forgot to mention after Billy Zane walks away. Audrey has a letter for her at the desk. And she opens it.
Yes.
And it seems to be a part of one. It has a bunch of random words, and then one small note saying to go to the Roadhouse at 9:30, a gathering of the angels, as it were. And speaking of angels, I guess we should go to your least favorite, more of a devil in your mind.
Devil woman.
Is Dale talking to Josie about
Marty Robbins is right. I'm sorry, continue.
About being in Seattle. He wants the true story, but she's not giving it to him. He keeps saying, I need to know what happened. I want to understand. If you're not going to tell me, you're going to be in serious trouble. And we can see Catherine is listening in. Josie says that she wants him to go now. And that's when Dale does get up and says that he wants her to come to the station house by 9, or he's going to come for her. And that's when Dale leaves and Catherine enters and asks about Detective Cooper being there. And you can tell that Josie feels the world closing in on her, just with how she's reacting. I thought she was going to pass out because she did earlier.
Yeah, she did earlier in the episode.
Andrew,
right.
But I thought she was going to do it again, have a panic attack. But Catherine tells her that Thomas Eckert wants to see her later, and she will see him and tell him whatever she wants, and just pray that he believes her, because now she knows Andrew's alive, and if Eckert knows that, he's going to think Josie betrayed him. But there's this cool part of this scene where Catherine takes the book, and behind it is a gun. And she takes the book out of the room, and that's when Josie goes to it, takes out the gun, and she's holding it as she's trying to think about what she'll do.
Yeah, again, just don't care. I mean, they're stretching this out here when you could add one of these expository scenes basically saying, wait, you mean to tell me Josie was married to such and such and she supposedly shot him and killed him, and she came up here and then blah, blah, blah. So we as a viewer can go, oh yeah, because I don't care. That makes sense. Maybe now I can kind of rebalance and pay attention to this last little bit of the story arc, because it's a shame, because, you know, Josie was best as what? A sex pot, right? Doing her thing. Okay. What was Catherine best at? Matching wits with somebody. And she did that with Ben, and she hasn't really been able to do that. She's kind of starting to do that now. And it is a cool scene. I agree with you with her taking a book and then the guns there. I'm like, oh, okay. Now we don't have to listen to it. We're watching what's going on here, and we see her take the gun, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. But again, don't care.
I'm
just
sorry.
like the next scene. Don't care. Go ahead.
Oh, well, then give it to me, because I do care.
Yeah, you do. Go ahead.
Well, this is the one of the few times we actually get a nature transition, because we see the waterfall.
Yes, that's true.
Go up to the lodge, and we see Bobby in Ben's office.
What's Ben wearing? Did you write this down?
He's wearing like a tracksuit.
A Fila tracksuit, not the Adidas one, which is really popular, but Fila. He looks fantastic in it, but again, not what he's supposed to do. So it's hard for me to take him serious, but he is rocking it really well.
Yeah, well, yeah, it seems that he has a slight health kick going on, which good for him. And he asks Bobby, who just hung up the phone. He was trying to reach somebody for Ben, but couldn't. And Ben's like, oh, it's no matter. I want you to join us for the board meeting. It's a very special board meeting. And so they go over to the couch, and who enters but
Billy Zane.
We get his name. It's John Justice Wheeler, which I don't know. I kind of like that name.
It's a very punchable name, just like his face.
Wow. I didn't know you felt so strongly about Billy Zane.
Billy Zane makes everybody feel strongly.
But Ben starts explaining that he invested in Wheeler years ago. Gave him a pittance, really. And Wheeler took that and made a successful business. But now their company has fallen on hard times. They've had a lot of failures. So he wants John Wheeler to take the same chance that Ben took all those years ago.
He's got to pay the piper.
That's right. And he says that what they have left, they lost the Ghostwood projects, they lost the mill, but they still have spirit. And that's when he goes to this little board that he has set up, and he removes it, and he shows a pine weasel. For a split second, I thought, oh no, he's still insane.
That's funny.
But
because he's rocking the tracksuit, he breaks out the pine weasel. Everybody else there is sitting down looking at him, trying to take him seriously, and they're all dressed up in their office suits. And I failed to mention that in addition to the John Lennon spectacles he wears, Ben's sitting there walking around pointing at everything, not with a cigar, not with something business-like attire. He's rocking the very, very long, with the leaves, piece of celery.
Yes. That is it. But he points to it and says, the weasel is on its way towards extinction here in Twin Peaks. And he wants to save the weasel. But to do that, they have to stop Catherine's Ghostwood project. And Jerry calls it out right there. So what you're saying is we can make her the villain, stop her project, and then just take it over later. And I don't know if Ben's exactly planning that, but I hope so, because that is a damn smart move. And he makes a joke after that, because Audrey asks, okay, we saved the weasel, and then what? And that's when Ben says, I don't know. Then maybe I'll consider a run for the Senate. And that's where the scene ends.
It's an interesting scene in that he's back to doing what he's supposed to be doing, that we've kind of know about plot and scheme. And the problem is it seems a little goofy and silly, although I do like the environmental angle to it. I think that's got merit. It's obviously a convenient way to introduce a new character, Billy Zane. We don't know too much about him, so that doesn't really have a lot of oomph. And we're only popping because we know who Billy Zane is now, 30 years after the show. So at the time, I think would lack even less punch. And like I said, the way he's dressed, maybe it is supposed to be like, hey, I'm healthy now or whatever. I get it. But that's not his thing. His thing was he's sitting there by himself with the cigars, with the fire roaring. He's behind his desk, and he would already have a plan and a backup plan. And that's what we know. So again, to me, he stole kind of your description. Seems a little insane. And, it's a better scene than some of the earlier scenes, too. So I'm at least a little bit more amused with this one than I don't really care what's happening from the Catherine Martell side of it, because it's all intertwined. So we'll see how these two converge at some point, should they ever do that. And the Pine Weasel is silly, but it does work. Okay, it'd been better if it was an owl, but just because how we say there's certain themes. Because again, in this episode, you mentioned at the beginning, before Pete's talking about Capablanca, one of the best chess players of all time, and positions and all that kind of stuff. Because when Merle's playing this, and that's going to be a factor here shortly, we did see with the really nice hand carved chess piece set, a nice hand carved owl thing right next to it, and here we get tons of coffee and pie. So they're putting all these things in the show, even if they're not referencing them, for us to go, oh yeah, they hadn't forgotten about us, and the things that just organically took off that people liked. So you mentioned the one key piece of information in an earlier scene with Audrey is getting an incomplete piece of paper that basically is like, meet me at like 9:30 at this place, if you don't want to die. Not quite that, but whatever. Because in this next scene, we are at the diner, and we get the two lovely ladies there, Shelley and what's her face?
Norma,
that's it. Not Norman, but Norma. They're talking, and again, another way to introduce another character or reintroduce one. Let us know that one's coming. She's talking on the phone, and I think it's her sister's going to be coming back into town soon. So I don't think we've seen her. We've seen Shelley's. Nothing of Shelley, so we'll see what happens here, because these two work together, and this is what they do. She's away from Bobby, so okay, Shelley's just sort of there. She had the subplot line with Leo and seems to be away from him, no mention of him. So if you didn't know anything about it, you started watching, she'd be like, well, what's she good for? What's going to happen? But as they're cleaning up and talking about stuff, you get where, hey, by the way, this was left for you, and she gets it. Big Ed walks in with that awesome buttery brown friggin' jacket that's just incredible. I mean, seriously, I mentioned this way back before he comes in. This is his sex machine outfit, because Norma goes absolutely crazy, and he's just takes her in her arms. She's all smiling. Shelley's watching them get all cutesy, and it's actually kind of a nice scene, because we know how difficult having a stable relationship is in here. And that's one thing I do like about the show, is that having a relationship has its costs. Whether they're good people, bad people, people involved in something else, it mirrors reality in a way. There's no such thing as a cut and dry, clean relationship. And when we see that, we're like, oh, okay, he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. And it's like, okay, I see where we're going. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, when he said, I want you to marry me, it still felt a little premature, because we don't know what exactly is going to happen with Nadine. There has to be some kind of legalities there.
Well, yeah. He did crap and get, it's crap or get off the pot, right? It's the old expression that you rated. And so I think that's what they both were looking for, was that point. And they were almost on it in season 1, and then they had to back off. And so now we're wondering if this was ever going to happen. We were wondering if the ladies were going to be in a cat fight. So while it may be premature, technically speaking, being high school sweethearts and all that too, and still seeing each other almost every day for the next 20 years, whatever it's been, I can see it. It's not too far-fetched to me.
Yeah. And you know what? I love how this works out because it goes to the second transition of the night.
Mm-hmm.
A tree that we get to go down and we see Leo. We were just talking about Shelly, but now we see her husband there, and he is just whittling at this stick he's making. It seems that Wyndham Earl asked for it as he came out,
Yep.
and he's dressed as the trucker from the scene before.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually so good that I didn't know it was him at first.
Yeah, and the way they shot it too, it wasn't that obvious, like they were focusing on the letter and the pullback, and you see the cat. No, they just played it, and you're like, God damn it! When you go back and look at it, you're like, that's good. Yeah, I agree.
So Wyndham Earl, he goes up to Leo and asks for the stick, and he seems calmer, cooler, far more collected than he was in the last episode.
Who's that?
Wyndham Earl. I mean, he's still rambling on a bit, but it's not as insane as it was last time.
How do you now? What'd you make of him the way he treated Leo here? Because I keep thinking Leo, when he gets consciousness, is going to be back to 100% mental capacity, but he's like, good boy, and Leo still has that shock collar around his neck. So I don't know about this scene. I mean,
Leo is trying to regain his faculties. That's what he's doing.
That's what it seems like. Okay.
Yeah, and so Wyndham Earl, even though it is absolutely cruel and inhumane, he is doing this to help Leo. He actually is. It's like a pet project for him while he's in town. And the scene really ends after he puts on this metal tip on the stick, and we realize what he's making then, and that's an arrow. But this scene was fine. I liked it, but it doesn't come into even close to the next scene. Do you want to take it, or?
It's a very quick scene, but I agree with you. I think it's one of the best scenes of the episode. Norma goes in to see Hank, who's, like I said, been arrested and Hank has a moment basically where he says, yeah, I know I've screwed up. I'm trying to work on myself. I might try to see a therapist. So he's trying to sell himself, in front of her about being better. But she's basically like, well, I want a divorce. He's like, yeah, I don't blame you. And they kind of go back and forth because Hank can't just say, all right. He always has to get something out of a situation. And he wants Norma to provide an alibi so he won't get charged. And he says, you do that, I'll give you the divorce. And he seems sincere about it. For him, it's consistent with the way he normally talks. But she's like, no, don't you pull me in this. And this is one thing I did like, because Norma always seems super, super passive, but she gets a little bit angry about all that. And they talk about, what's going on with Ed. And she has a line in here I wrote down, I thought was a great line too, where basically she's getting ready to storm off and she goes, I'd rather be his whore than your wife. And I'm like, damn it, that's good stuff. We need more of that here in Twin Peaks rather than all this other crap. And I thought it was a really good scene.
Because he's trying to say that, oh, you're just, this is it, Norma. You're just going to be his whore now. And when she says, I'd rather be his whore than your wife, it is great. It was, he's just defeated right there. It's like she kicked the crutch out from under him. Oh, and man, I really do love this scene.
It was a good scene because we don't really care about her that much. We don't hate her. But when we see a little bit, sometimes a slight change of behavior or out of character gets you amped up for somebody when they get some balls or whatever. And that was the good thing about it, is you want people to take on, action for your consequences, whether they're good or bad. And so when people are doing something, at least you can give them a benefit of the doubt and like them for at least trying, not running and hiding like piss ass Bobby, which unfortunately we'll have to talk about shortly. I think the next scene's actually pretty good too. This is where you've got Cooper, Truman, and you've got Pete, and they're overlooking the chess layout over in the office. And the two things I like about in this scene, or actually there's several, is one, that all three of them have great chemistry. I love that they still have the green backboard with the town kind of chalked out a little bit. And it's a stupid little map with really no names on it, but there's like one or two little mountains and a little thing for downtown. I just love that kind of stuff. it makes me feel like the town is real a little bit. It's a simple, easy way to do that. Maps, pictures, whatever, not just transitions. And they're trying to figure out what move to put in the public paper, and they've got a few minutes left before the paper closes, so they're trying to do it. And Pete's getting a chance to kind of talk and show off. And there's this massive plate of donuts in there, and they have coffee. And while they're talking about what the thing's going to be, you get Lucy, even though we don't see her, thankfully, and they go to do it. It's a little bit of a longer scene than the last one here, but Albert comes in and he's talking to Coop about stuff, and this is where Truman realizes, yeah, Josie's it. She's got to come in. He knows by the exchange that it goes, and I think it's a pretty good scene.
Yeah, no, I agree. When Albert asks for Dale and says, how are you going to tell? How are you going to tell Truman? But Dale says that this has gone to the point he's not going to just leave her be. He's going to have to arrest her. And Harry doesn't say anything. He steps out of the room and he hears this. And that's when Dale and Albert see Truman. And Albert says a line, something along the lines of, well, I think he knows. I don't think you have to tell him. And it's hard because we don't want Harry to be heartbroken. We've known this has been coming a long time, though. But from there, speaking of the woman of the hour, I suppose.
Well, let's pause for 1 second before going there. There's one more thing I wanted to point out about this scene. When you said about Harry, he kind of knows, and I think he's accepting it. We don't mind him. We kind of like him, but it's hard to be emotionally invested in him because he's really chill too. And Cooper's a little bit different, but he's our eyes, driving in the town. He's sitting there, and while they're talking about the position and they get the move made on the chessboard, what's cool is they say, are you sure, this is going to take a couple moves before any pieces come off? And he goes, yeah, this is the move here. And Pete points out, Cooper is standing there, and because you can see all three of them, it's a one camera shot. He's finishing up chewing his donut. And right before he steps out with Albert, like we just talked about, there's the line that I think that Truman says, I've never heard of a man who murders by the rules, because he's a little suspect about what's going on. And Cooper does this thing that we haven't seen, but he does it in a friendly way, but it's just different. And it made me pop because it's something we really liked before. And he finishes up his last bite of the donut. He gets ready to go out with Albert, and he looks over to Pete, who's sitting down. He stands up and he gives him a really violent thumbs up, kind of like, great work, Pete. And then walks out with Albert. I was just like, yeah, I'm feeling this scene here. These guys have chemistry together, all of them, even Albert, who's not there all the time, and Pete. When Twin Peaks maximizes screen time with these combinations, it really, really, really works. Yeah, unlike the next scene you're getting ready to start.
Yeah, speaking of chemistry, I think this next scene actually does have it too, because Josie, you see her out of her maid's outfit. She's in like some kind of gown, and she's putting on makeup.
Sexy silky nightgown.
Yeah,
with creepy old man. Actually, rich old man.
Yeah, that's when Andrew comes into the room. He has a bottle of champagne and says, well, we've had a bottle or two in our time, and pours a drink out for each of them. And he starts saying that at first he hated her. He absolutely hated her. But soon the hate just kind of faded. And he's almost taunting her in a way, saying that Eckert absolutely loves you. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And Josie is trying to say something along the lines of, no, I really loved you. I care. But he says, I ask you for no more lies. He knows the police are coming, and maybe Thomas can help her out. Maybe Thomas Eckert can get her out of the country. But he says he's interested in how this situation will turn out as he's leaving the room. And she calls for Andrew, and he turns around and rather coolly says, we won't speak again. And that's when he leaves. This man has a presence. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Even though we don't care about this story, really. It's coming to a close here, but we still don't care. His performance is one of those things that, like, okay, I can see where this is coming.
I agree with you. He's a heavy. You believe that a guy in like the way he's dressed, the way he carries himself, he's got that charisma that is attractive, even to a woman that might be in her 30s, say, like Josie Packard is allegedly. I don't know her actual age in terms of the show, but you can definitely see where it would take a man like him to have somebody younger as a wife. It does seem believable. I'll give you that. I totally agree with you on that. We do get in the next scene here. I actually don't mind the scene. It's just Bobby's just
James.
I'm sorry, I keep doing that. James, he's so damn insufferable at times. And they're outside. It's sunny, which is a bit of a change. And Donna's made this great little bread, cheese plate, fruit plate, or whatever like that to have a little picnic or whatever. But she can already tell on her face, the writing's on the wall sort of thing. Although I have to say the lighting was not very generous to them in here or whatever, because it really pales out her complexion here. I don't know why I'm saying that, but it makes even James's hair look dyed, and it might be, I don't know, but she's got a very pale complexion, but she's got a very classy, old school sort of look to her. She's got her pearls on, her hair back, and they're having a conversation about what's going on, and they're playing the damn music. And for a guy that's slayed as much as he had in the past few weeks, in terms of the timeline of the show, he's nailed all the number one ladies except for Shelley. He's acting still like a punk, but he's basically running off, and he's like, I promise one day I'll return or whatever. I'm going, I don't really care. I care more about the guy that had more character, and that was the orchid guy. And we get this clown, and I guess that's his character, is to just be that, lovesick puppy kind of guy. And I'm like, I just don't understand it. He's for a guy like that to be as successful as we would say at that age, at that level, with the number 1, 2, 3 women at your school in a small town, not reason to be unhappy. And an older woman too that tried implementing you in a murder scheme. Okay, I get it. Might be a little whatever, but it just doesn't work. I don't know. She's good. She carries the scene. He's not horrible, but it's his character is what I don't like. But I like how it's outside, and it's a different thing. It's not a bad scene.
No, but he's incredibly stupid. He's an idiot. That's what James is. Him saying, "Oh, I've got to go. I've got to get away from it all." You just did that, and you ended up almost in jail for murder.
The idiot is the next scene where you've got Pete and Catherine sitting there, huh?
You go ahead and take that. Go ahead.
Because Pete's sitting there working on tying off a lure he's making or whatever. I'm not a fisherman, so don't get on me for you people that know that stuff better. I do. She's reading Great Expectations, holding her tee up like a bitch. She does it so good. And the doorbell knocks, and someone knocks on the door. She just stares at him, and it's like this contest, and it's like, then he finally gets up. I'm like, damn it, I want to see him stand up to her for once. That's why it made no sense when she finally came back to life, actually reappeared in the show after the fire, that I totally didn't understand his reaction, because we know he loves her and all that, but he does her bidding. And it just makes me sick to see a guy like Pete that we kind of like to be so
whipped.
It's beyond whipped, because he's not getting any,
That's true.
It's just,
he's more of a slave than Josie was.
But he doesn't give off that vibe, but the way it's written, and of course it's Truman coming in and trying to figure out what's going on with Josie, and Catherine, of course, has more than enough information to volunteer. And I'm like, yeah, I just didn't really care about this scene at all.
I disagree, because once Harry is asking, where the hell is Josie? Where is she, Catherine? Catherine is, she's clearly not comfortable, but she goes ahead and says, with Thomas Eckert. And that's when Harry runs out. And the great part about this is right after we see Pete, and he's not happy either. He's staring at Catherine because he does care about Josie. It's not in the way that Andrew cared about Josie, but it's
a companionship thing. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so her going there, he can understand this she's in danger. And actually, speaking of Eckert, that's who we see. It's taken a while, but he returns to the screen, and he gets in the elevator. But we see from behind him a figure step up and presses the stop on the elevator. And who is it? It's Andrew. And Andrew is trying to engage with him, but Eckert's saying, I don't believe in ghosts, because he knows that he's supposed to be dead. And that's when Andrew has a great moment in here. And he says, Thomas, I want you to take a closer look. I'm alive. And
it is a good scene. It's good dialogue.
And he really lies here. That's what he does.
I want to put you on the spot for a moment, though.
Okay.
And we don't have to get too deep with it, because I'm putting you on the spot because it's for my own sake. Part of the not caring about her in this angle means I haven't really thought too much about it. And so let's just summarize what we know about Josie up to this point. She was a sex worker, figured out a way to get out of her situation, and I guess she married one of these guys, went to kill him, and then married the other guy. And can you kind of understand exactly what her whole thing is? Because if not, why do we care? Or it's not been summarized at all. We've not seen the characters till recently.
Thomas Eckert got her actually out of sex work, made her his love slave, I suppose you could say. But he was partners with Andrew here. And
which one's the smooth talking guy?
Yeah. What?
Which one of these two gentlemen is the smooth talking guy?
I mean,
no. Which one's Andrew is what I'm saying.
Oh, Andrew. He's the older one. His hair is gone completely.
He's the smooth talking guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we just talked about that basically said, "Hey, I'm not mad if you're trying to kill me. See ya."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he says. But here he absolutely lies to Thomas Eckert. He says that, how do you think I did it? And I guess he leads him on because Thomas Eckert says, Josie. And he doesn't deny it. He actually leans into it, saying that, of course, why you should be used to betrayal by now, Thomas. And Eckert says something along the lines that he's taking care of the sheriff that's in love with her, and Josie is returning to him. And that's when Andrew says, well, if she's returning, you better be careful. I'm going to go ahead and go down. This is your floor. I'm going to attend a gala. As of right now, nobody knows that I'm still alive. And he says, like a ta-ta, as Eckert walks out. And that's the last we see of Andrew for now.
Yeah, don't care. Okay, she's married both these guys. One of them got him out of this.
Well,
her out of sex.
She wasn't married to Thomas Eckert. She was owned by Thomas.
You see, my
Eckert.
point here is we kind of know because they've talked about it, alluded to it, and because we haven't seen the characters, it's hard for us that want to feel sorry for her. Other than, oh my God, she's hot. She's acting like a sad Asian slave, sex slave. Other than that, we don't really care. I mean, seriously. And I've originally, when I saw the show, I will say this: when we saw season 1, and when it premiered, we knew that Who Killed Laura Palmer was the essential hook. And ABC went ahead and screwed that up by saying, no, you need to reveal the killer. And then that's when Lynch said, screw you guys. And he only came back for the last episode or 2 to tie things up. So we're seeing where the group of writers is having to write themselves and all these storylines in the different directions. And to me, with someone like Josie, you can have all this and it might make sense. But like we talked about with the Twin Peaks mayor and his brother that were fighting over the sex pot woman that we haven't seen at all, that really small 2-3 episode angle was kind of neat, but they could have stretched that out and filled that in even more, and they didn't. So there's a lot of like lazy writing, some things that they've done okay, but it's just with Josie, again, if you take away how hot she is and how the fact that she's an exotic Asian in allegedly the Pacific Northwest, and the only one on the show for that matter, really, it's like, why do we care? And it could have been interesting that here she is somebody that actually worked her way up, however you want to look at that. Or maybe she really did love the older gentleman who showed her the new ways of the new world, and maybe she turned bitchy and could have, fought with Catherine Martell, or had an affair with Pete or something like that. They didn't decide to go anywhere that had been interesting or engaging. So that's why I'm asking you, because I just remember watching it, even though I've watched it here again with you recently. I'm going, I don't care, don't know.
Yeah,
She supposedly killed somebody, betrayed this person, did that, whatever. That's all she does. That's all she knows how to do. Betray somebody and hook up with somebody and be told what to do. That's all she knows. That's why I don't care about her.
well, I'm not going to completely agree about that. Doesn't know what to do on her own, because, well, I guess I should wait. I'll wait.
Yeah, let's
till
wait
the
for
last
that
minute.
as we finish up here, because we got one scene before the big scene. So go ahead with the next scene. The
Well,
Billy Zane scene.
oh, okay. Well, they're having a meal. It's Audrey, Ben, and John Wheeler, and he's ready for John to help him out with his mission. He's giving more of what he said earlier. But quickly, man comes over, whispers into Ben's ear, and Ben is like, well, I hope you can excuse me. I have to go into the kitchen because the chef has tried to stab Jerry. And he says it very casually, like, before walking off, leaving Audrey and Wheeler alone. He doesn't think that she likes him. And she basically says that he's right, saying that the Horns have been fine for years and they'll continue being fine without his help. And that's when Billy Zane is looking at her and he says, indeed. He doesn't try to argue with her. But that's when she lets the silence settle for a second and then asks, so where has he been? And he answers all over the place. But it's really good to finally be home.
What'd you make of the line when she said, I'm only 18?
That's what she says right after that. As he's looking at her, and he asks, what does that have to do with the price of eggs? You can tell that she doesn't care that she's only 18 when Cooper's around, but she goes ahead and mentions that for Zane. And it seems that Audrey is slowly starting to shake away from Mr. Cooper.
It's not slowly at all. Her panties were wet from the first time he came in. And the way they talked, it seemed like they knew each other when they were kids, is the vibe that you get. And so it's just been a really long time. So she's, hooked by the mystery and the attraction of this really handsome Billy Zane character coming in. So it's okay. It seems to work. And, we can expect that she's going to get a lot of suitors her way. And he carries himself with that old world man about town kind of feel to it. He definitely seems like somebody that I could see, turn of the century. I mean, I hate to use the Titanic reference here, but he's built for that. He just has got that turn of last century look, I should say.
But that's pretty much where it ends after that. That she has to excuse herself because she has a date at the Roadhouse. Not really a date, but you want to go ahead.
When Donna, Shelley, and Audrey hook up at the Roadhouse together, and they put the little papers together that has this poem where they read, that's kind of about it. I'm just staring at the scene going, my God, they should have had these women on screen together a lot more, because they're just gorgeous and it's a neat little group. And you don't get a lot of girl power in a lot of these episodes. You might get one or two, or we talked about before earlier where they were doing some detective work, I think in season 1, trying to look for killers and stuff like that. But here I was going, okay, I hope these three kind of get a little bit of an angle to see what happens here. And obviously it's got Lynn and Merle will be involved, but it's a combination we really haven't had. So I'm curious. And I think that's kind of positive. But the next scene is the scene that, of now, is the craziest one of all. Catherine lets Cooper know that Josie's in Mr. Eckhart's room. And he goes there. He sees Josie, shoots him. And then things get weird because he kind of gets to his feet, but he collapses or whatever. And she pulls her gun on Cooper. And Cooper's not trying to shoot. It's a standoff. And Harry pops in next to Cooper. So we got ourselves a Mexican standoff, as it were. until something weird happens. So I will stop, sir, because this is a first watch for you. And I'd like you to indulge everybody with the initial spewing of any feelings you may have about the scene.
I'm going to. That was a really quick way to describe it, because Dale doesn't actually see anybody getting shot. Whenever he enters the room,
that's true.
See Josie on top of Eckert, and Eckert stands up laughing after a moment, walking towards Dale, and Dale doesn't understand what's going on, but that is when he collapses, and we see Josie. She's up, she's on her knees on the bed, has the gun out towards him, and that's when Dale asks, "Why did you shoot me?" And Josie says, "Because you were here. You being here, I knew my time was up. I knew I was going to be arrested. I had to take you out."
Right.
Which is calling back to what we said earlier. She does plan some things out on her own. Actually, in the elevator, there's actually a line from Andrew saying that maybe she does this. Maybe she's innocent, but maybe she plans all of this out. And which is something that you've said as well. But
evil woman.
That's when it seems that it's getting tenser and tenser. That's when Harry comes in, and Josie sees him, and she can't take it. She takes the gun, she points it at her own head, but before she can pull the trigger, she collapses. Harry rushes over, and he's trying to see if there's a pulse or anything, but it seems like she's dead. And that's when a bright light takes them out. Dale is watching the bed as we see Bob, who we haven't seen for many episodes, climb onto it, and he's asking, "What happened to Josie, Coop?" And he goes ahead and starts laughing, and it switches to the little man dancing in his red suit.
The vertically challenged individual, yes.
Yes, but after that, it fades back to reality, so it seems. Seeing Harry crying, holding Josie. But that's when we shift, panning in on the drawer knob, and we can see Josie's face in it. And she's like crying out, like she's stuck there. And that's when her face comes out of the doorknob, and it twists and turns and shifts until it is stuck. And it seems that her spirit is trapped.
Yep. Josie's essence ends up in a drawer knob, a wooden drawer knob.
Yeah.
And we see it. Yep. Haven't seen Bob in a long time. At least we got the answer of who shot Cooper, because, we've already know who killed Laura Palmer. Nobody seems to care anymore. This is where I just go, it's almost like the low life of the show, because we've had some turd episodes. We had some repivotings. We felt the things picked up a little bit. Maybe had one bad episode, but okay. We get this episode, okay, at least this hopefully appears to be an end. It picks up because you get Bob. And the one thing we talked about before is there's at least two spirits that we're of, Bob and Mike. We know there's this other place that Cooper's been to, the Red Room or whatever, with the tiles, and where he sees an older version of himself, as well as Laura, who whispered something. All this goes back to season 1. Most of that's been ignored here. The really weirdo supernatural stuff. The stuff with Bobby's father, with this whole project of extraterrestrial communication and secret government stuff out in the woods with the white Black Lodge stuff. That was really interesting, but they didn't continue that. They continued the personal lines, as it were, let's say, instead of some of the other ones, which, okay, I guess that's a choice you have to make as a writer. I honestly, to this day, because I have not researched it, I haven't cared, I haven't read all the books and stuff, I absolutely 100% do not get what the hell just happened here, other than her spirit ends up there. I know Bob's taunting Cooper's the way I take it. You're right, technically speaking, that we didn't see Josie shoot him, so we don't know. We automatically think, oh, maybe Bob infected one of them or the other or not or something. We don't know. We don't know about what's going on with Mike, if Mike's going to come again. Mike's been mentioned, a while ago. So it's hard sometimes when you haven't been reminded a little bit of certain plot lines or characters or instances as you're watching it, because there's so many that it's shifting back and forth to with all these characters. This came out of nowhere. The Bob thing I think was great. The doorknob is really bizarre. So I don't know what to expect from that. I think you leave people wanting more on something very strong, not necessarily weird. And the whole weird thing is just that I can't recall off the top of my head the last weird thing like this, but it's weird. And I don't know if that's good, but when I try to describe to somebody, oh, you should watch Twin Peaks, towards the end of the second season, the one evil woman that was sleeping around with all the old guys, she ends up having her spirit locked in a wooden doorknob. They look at me like, why the hell would you watch such a show?
Yeah, no, I can't blame him for being like that, because it is the strangest thing that has happened in this show.
That's my final thoughts. I want to close on that. What about you?
Yeah, no, yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot, and I'm hoping that we can ride this strong energy that it's getting back. That this feels like Twin Peaks. I hope we can ride that all the way through this season.
Yeah, it did feel more like a Twin Peaks episode. Now I agree with you on that. Definitely a lot of energy, and the scoring, everything, a lot of familiar things in here. So I would say it's an entertaining episode. I'm not going to say good or bad. I'll just say entertaining and leave it at that. But yeah, we'll check that out again next week when we review season 2, episode 17, as we're closing up here on Twin Peaks season 2, our review here on Xtreme TV, where we cover television shows. Check us out. Let us know if there's something you'd like. I'm your host, Rob, here with Professor Pixel. I'd like to thank you all for listening. As always, good night and stay extreme.
So long.